And we were alone, and some way, every know something. I think
I mean, I
Yeah.
have come across a shadow person before multiple times. So, yeah,
Oh yeah,
definitely.
multiple times for me too. Either the corner of the eye or something around some corner. Oh yeah, multiple times.
I know some people talk about, you know, like, we're just, let me know if you comment if there is, your experience, that kind of thing. But yeah, I heard a lot of people talk about and another, and then another talk about people see one wearing it. I don't know if you ever seen anything.
I
Myself, yeah.
haven't, but mine have come in the form of like the shape of an actual person.
hmm Oh yeah, I actually have seen the Hat Man, and I came to find out those are more related to the Men in Black phenomenon. And shadow people in general are the reason it looks shadowy is because it's just slightly out of frequency. It could be any form of being, and some are more white, like mist looking. But the classic shadow person, sometimes it's alien related, sometimes it's dimensional or ghost. And I've seen all forms of that follow people through their whole life. Yeah.
Mhm.
Multiple clients have come to me with similar issues. Yeah.
Um, my experience the two that I can remember off the top of my head, uh, I believe that is my friend that is in the watching the stream right now, the I am Williams, right? Anyway, so he probably has heard these stories before, so I apologize. But the one time I literally got to stare the shadow person, I guess, in their eyes. They didn't have eyes, but like where their eyes would be, like I was that close. Um, I used to work at a Walmart and I would work the really, really early morning shift where, and this was back in the day when like Walmart was 24 hours. And I worked like I think at 7 or something, but I sometimes would get there like an hour before my shift just to kind of relax and if I need to go grocery shopping and that I can get it all done before, the crowd comes in and before I even have to work my actual shift. So I decided I was going to look around and in particular I really wanted to go look at the plants. And so this was like springtime and there was a area that had hanging plants, but then also shelves of plants. And um, I was looking kind of at the shelves of the plants, and all of a sudden I heard this noise, and I looked up, and I saw this figure, this literally like a black shadow, like had no definitive hair, like very human looking, but no, like you couldn't decipher a nose, you couldn't decipher ears, you couldn't decipher hair or anything like that, but you could see a hand, you could see that it was, human-esque shaped, and it had moved one of the hanging plants like this and it was looking at me like this. And I stood there, and to me it felt like, at least a minute of staring at it because my first thought was, well, what the hell is loss prevention, which is the guys that go around making sure nobody's going to steal anything? What are they doing watching me? Like, this is weird. And then it dawned on me, oh, this is not a human. And it was like right about that time that I was like, oh, yeah, this isn't human. All of a sudden, it it almost like you could tell like it got startled that it realized, oh shit, like she she notices me, she sees me, she's staring right at me, and it just took off. And then my second thought was was one of my friends playing a joke on me. And I remember slowly walking around the display, and I realized as I'm walking that you can hear my footsteps, but I didn't hear footsteps running away. And I get around to the other side, there's no one. I walk down that whole aisle in looking into other aisles along the way. Nobody was around there. There's no possible way that somebody could have moved that fast without making a noise. But I watched that plant swing back and forth a couple times before I walked around. And
That's interesting.
yeah, I wasn't scared at the time. I was more just like, what the heck? Why are you watching me? Like, that was kind of my thought. But once again, I assumed that it was a human watching me and not something else. And this particular Walmart is extremely haunted, so I don't know if it was the local ghost. I had a couple encounters with the ghost in the past. So I don't know if that ghost just, was manifesting itself like, into a body or anything, and it just didn't completely form, or what the deal was. Or, honestly, I'm a firm believer that it probably was someone from another dimension peeking in. I don't know. The other time was definitely a spirit. I was with the Paranormal Lights team that I'm a part of, which you boys know about, you guys. And we were at this lady's house, and we had a lot of people for the size of the house that it was. And so it was really early on. We had just brought in everything, and two or three of us were in the living room, and there was a hallway to go down that, took you down to like one or two rooms and the bathroom. And then there was a kitchen on the opposite side of that. And I was standing kind of in the doorway to go into the hall from the living room, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody walk by. And I turned to one of the investigators and I said, who the heck is walking around? Like, we should all be over here getting our stuff ready, talking to the client. Like, we shouldn't be walking around. Like, that's an invasion of privacy. And the investigator goes, oh, well, I don't think there was anybody over there. I said, I just saw somebody walk by in the hallway. They're like, oh, maybe somebody went to the restroom. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right, maybe. So I peeked my head down, and the bathroom door is wide open. The light's not on. Nobody was there. We did get a lot of evidence at that place, but yeah, those were the two main encounters that I've had with a shadow like person. Neither one of them were negative in any way.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I've had multiple experiences, like say with the with like the Hat Man type one, for instance. That's more in that's more entering alien realm right there. But
Okay, so what was your experience with it? You said you had
well,
experiences with it.
well, yeah, the regular shadow person type figure was this was when we were in Arizona. And this would be in the middle of the night, of course. Things like that, generally happen when it's like 2 in the morning or something like this. And sometimes we always felt like we were being watched in that house while we were there in Arizona. And came out to go to the bathroom and actually saw a dense shadow person pass next to me, past when I went to the bathroom. And we came to find out later it was the mirror that we had. That I have a video with a bunch of orbs coming out of that very mirror, and I always called it the Thousand Orb Mirror, a nickname for that. And we eventually just got rid of it because it was too dense of energy, and it was this major portal, and we just said, screw it, we're just going to get rid of it. But what ended up happening is that's where this shadow person went into. literally got up and climbed into it and went through it. And a little bit taller than me, I'm 6'1", it was probably about 6'3", somewhere in there. Looked like a regular person, but just looked like had a long hair and down to the shoulders. You could clearly tell the build was female, not male, um, and the way they were shaped. And I couldn't see any face, eyes, or anything like that. You could just clearly tell it was a silhouette for the most part.
Mm.
And jumped in the mirror. And a second incident in that house was one that was up to my knees, a shorter one. That walked into the kitchen. There was this like motion blur of a shadow person that walked past at the height of my knees and ran past. And I've noticed some shadow people are can be elemental types, some are alien, but the other one, the Hat Man, that one was on an investigation that I was on with some Sage members, and we went into this woman's house, and I did a ghost box session on her porch. Was asking about because she had ET encounters and encountered the Hat Man, and I'm like, all right, we'll go looking for this. I actually did see down in her basement big like he was transparent, but a guy in like the fedora hat, classic, almost like spy hat, kind of like a spy versus spy look, and had the classic like trench coat look. And at that time, I didn't know about anything about the Hat Man phenomenon. It's also linked to another thing called the Smoking Man phenomenon. They based it on the character from the X-Files. And there's always this scent of cigarette smoke along with the Hat Man phenomenon. And I found out recently the same thing. They're basically related to the Men in Black phenomenon. So or within that realm. And that's where I encountered the Hat Man, was on that investigation. They are pretty creepy, I will say. They're up there in the demon class as far as I'm concerned. But they are one of the biggest pains in the ass to remove if you have to clear someone's house and they happen to have a Hat Man stalking them. It's a big pain in the ass. But it's not impossible to do it. It takes the homeowner and the client or whomever some work energetically to really keep a lot of that away. But they're up in the demon class as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, those were my encounters with three distinct cases with shadow people. Others were in public where I've seen things run past me and such, like in Walmart, even in a crowded
I mean, I've
store.
seen that too, but it has never been an actual shadow-like person.
Mm-hmm. Mainly ghosts, things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Walmart's ripe with paranormal activity. It doesn't matter which one you go into, there's always something in a Walmart. I've never been in one recently where there's been very few people, but I have seen it happen even with a store full of people. I've actually seen ghosts run past people. But the shadow phenomenon itself, that motion blur. Actually, one more I will tell you was at Hartley Street in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I woke up. And I know this one was more of an alien occurrence because I woke up with a green light on top of me, like in the room, and I look up, and there's this amoeba-looking thing that goes, this green glowing like amoeba-looking thing going through the ceiling, and I look to the left and right of me, and there are two motion blur shadow people going in two different directions, one towards the mirror, one out the door. And that one I know is more Greys related. It just sometimes they make themselves look like they are dimensional or they are your perception of them is screwed up, so you see this like weird motion blur effect. They do that psionically with their psionic energy, but to make you think, or their telepathy to make you think that. But that was a big incident where I saw two at one time going opposite directions in the middle of the night. It's always in the middle of the night. But yeah,
Yes,
that was more. Yeah.
I guess there was another time, but once again, it was a spirit that lived there, that just hadn't fully, you know, gotten into a physical form. And he was just looking in at me while I slept, and which I told him it was okay, but that he wasn't allowed in my room when I was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
Phantom, you've mentioned to me that you had an encounter, right?
Yeah, so one that really sticks out with me, and it's actually kind of stuck with me most of my life, or almost all of it. I think I had to have been, I don't know, I want to say maybe 5 at the time. But I remember, when I used to live in that old trailer court, and you remember that, Chris. Well, I remember, well, like it was like sometime in the middle of the night. I don't know what time, maybe 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. I remember laying in my bed, and I look at the door, and to this day, I don't really know if this was a dream or if this actually happened, but it seems so real to me. But I remember laying there, and I look in the corner, and I saw like this black silhouette in my doorway where my room was, and it had green eyes, which for a shadow person, I mean, as far as from what I read up, is not really a normal trait, but for all intents and purposes, this was a shadow person to me. And I remember getting up out of bed out of curiosity, going up to it and touching the eye, and then it left like a glowing green like residue on my finger. And like I said, it could have been a dream, it may not have, but it seems so real. So that's one thing that that's one encounter I distinctly remember. I know there's been a couple instances here in this house where the boys had what seemed to be a shadow person back in their room hanging out. They nicknamed him Steve, but he used to like sometimes the garage door would open, or sometimes like the door that leads from their room out to the garage would be open. But I know that my oldest and my youngest said at one point they've seen what seemed like just like a shadow standing by the door. And so they always nicknamed him Steve. And I know that my wife has actually also seen a shadow person standing in the hallway where the other boys' rooms are. And doesn't really say anything, just kind of stands there. He'll be there for a split second and then be gone. So those are the 3 that I can think of.
Yeah, that's fascinating. With the green eyes, that's fascinating. That one I would classify more in the dimensional and/or alien category there because of the green aspect.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that it allowed you to get close enough for you to touch its eye.
Right. I was a little shocked by it too. That's why I wonder if it was just a really vivid dream, but it seemed like it really happened. At least to me, it felt like it happened. But yeah, the fact that I was able to get closer, it didn't even move. It I just walked up to it. And you would think a 5-year-old would not be brave enough to do that. For some reason, in my head, I'm like, I really want to touch the eye. It was just in my head. I really wanted to touch it.
Yeah, you had no fear of it. That's how it should be. People want to explore, but there's also a line where if it's something negative, you don't want to get too entangled with it. But yeah, I would have gone up and probably checked it out too.
So we do have a couple of YouTube videos that we thought we would go over tonight and just kind of, get our own thoughts on them. I'm going to go ahead and share some of those. Just going to start with this one.
Yesterday, upon the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away.
Have you ever seen a figure in your home of someone who wasn't there or shouldn't have been there? Someone who is person-sized but is absolutely black. You cannot see any physical features. It's just like a shadow of a person, and yet super clear. You can point to exactly where that person is. If you've experienced that, that is called a shadow person. And I'm going to be talking about that today, not from the point of view of trying to prove that it's a real phenomenon, simply to share the kind of experiences that people are having, and then have a think about what these phenomena might actually mean. Now, I'll be completely honest, I didn't take this topic at all seriously until it started happening to my young son. And like most parents, when he reported that when he was walking through the house at night, he could see shadow people, straight away I thought, okay, son, I think you were dreaming, or I think you were in that liminal place in between being awake and asleep, and you're seeing things that are not there. However, because of my research, I knew not to dismiss what my son was telling me and to ask more questions. And as my son spoke to me about these experiences, I started noticing some features of what he was telling me. First of all, he was not always asleep or half asleep when he saw these figures. And then he was very specific about where he saw them. There's one that sits on the couch over there with his feet on the cushions and his behind on the top of the couch. There's one that always stands there, and there's a slightly shorter one that stands over there. Well, I tried walking through that room in different shades of darkness to see if there was anything he might be seeing in a half awake state that he could interpret that way, and I couldn't see anything. And then one time he said, one of those things was in the corridor today when I came down to your room. So now it was somewhere else, somewhere he'd never seen it before.
Go ahead and pause it for a minute.
And then one time he said,
so it's interesting how he's talking about the whole aspect of, was his son half asleep and half awake? Because that's how I felt when I had my experience. So it's kind of making me wonder if maybe I really did experience this and it wasn't a dream.
Yeah, they're in those in between liminal spaces, like what he was saying. So in that weird theta alpha realm there. Yeah. Interesting.
Said, one of those things was in my room last night and I was absolutely terrified. And instead of saying, son, I think you were dreaming, it was probably a nightmare, I reassured him and said, well, nothing happened. It didn't hurt you or anything. No, and he was somewhat reassured. And then I said, can you draw for me exactly what you saw? And so he drew a shadow figure, human-shaped, but wearing the traditional headdress of a shaman. And when he drew that very precise image, I thought, oh my goodness, that is very specific. And where does my young son know that image from? It's the archetypal shamanic image, Jamiroquai style. And I know I've just shown my age by using that reference, but to give you an idea of what he drew. Well, these experiences continued through the years in different rooms, in different houses, at different ages. And the pattern was the same, that he would see these figures, they would be looking at him, but there was never any interaction, there was never anything that happened that really gave him cause to be afraid. Now, initially, I was willing to write this off as just one of those things that we experience as children, that our brains are trying to interpret the world around us as we're growing up, and it will fill in some gaps and make some mistakes from time to time. Except that my research path began intersecting with what my son was telling me. Now, my studies are in the field of ancestral narratives and how they speak to our place in the cosmos, our origins as a species. And as I've studied indigenous story and ancient biblical story and narratives from cultures all around the world, I've come to the conclusion that you and I live in a world of far more company than we generally acknowledge. And it's not difficult for me to believe that there may be entities around us that we don't perceive with our 5 physical senses. Now, anyone who's shared their home with a cat or a dog will be familiar with this. And you'll hear people say, my dog, round about the same time every evening, will react as if a person has just walked through the room. And it will follow them to the window, growl a bit at them, and then follow them as they walk out the room again. Cats and dogs seem to perceive movement.
So yeah, again, I can relate to this because our dog is constantly barking at nothing. At least to us, it looks like nothing. So it does make me wonder if she's seeing something that we're not seeing.
Yeah, Sammy does the same thing. He'll look at things that some things that I'm looking at. He'll be looking at the same thing, or he'll notice it first, and then I'll notice it after him. So yeah, they are actually seeing things as they're passing through walls or the ceiling or floor. I've noticed that many times.
Right. Or or they even possibly hear something that maybe we haven't heard. Like 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 our dog, she'll just start barking, then she'll look out the window like she's looking for something, and it's like, well, there's nothing out there. What did you even hear? You know, we like to make fun of her and say, oh yeah, there she goes barking at wind or barking at leaves. But it kind of makes me wonder, is there maybe she sees something or hears something we don't?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, my father had a cat that would follow things around his house. I even saw this was another shadow person instance. Saw a shadow person going through the picture window, and the cat actually jumped on the back of the chair as she was following what I was looking at. And it's almost like she had the attitude like, "Good, stay out of here," you know, that kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I know, Laura, you have a cat. Does he ever kind of act like that a little bit?
He does. He will, look, especially in towards the ceiling in certain areas. Actually, it's really funny. My roommate made the comment earlier today, like, I hate that when he does that. So he must do it a lot around her as well. Doesn't bother me.
Real quick, just want to say thank you, Ian, for the subscription and welcome to the stream. All right, we can go ahead.
Movement that we don't perceive. Sometimes they react as if it's a threat, and sometimes it's more a puzzled, what are you doing here kind of look. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a dog owner or cat owner who hasn't concluded that a cat's eyes and a dog's eyes and the frequency of their brain waves enables them to perceive entities that you and I don't perceive. And as long as they don't interact with us or scare us or do us any harm, we're happy to live with that belief. It doesn't bother us. And shadow people is that kind of a phenomenon for many people. Through my work in coaching, I've learned it's not just children who have this experience, it's adults too. And it's not just experiences at nighttime or after dreaming or in that liminal space between being awake and asleep. People see these entities in broad daylight. And from time to time, they might even attempt to capture them on camera. A friend of mine, who is an Aboriginal Australian, when he goes walkabout, says he can often see shadow people observing him from the forest. And he has sent me images of what he has seen while out on walkabout. He's not afraid of them. He's not quite sure how to interpret them. He's not sure what they are, simply that they observe him. As I've studied the texts of the Bible, the ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian, and Assyrian texts, the stories of the Maya from out of Guatemala, written up in the Popol Vuh, as I've listened to Norse legend, Greek mythology, African narratives, I have come to the belief that we are all observed by other species, that we are all under observation, that we have cosmic neighbors very interested in Homo sapiens, and they are observing us much in the same way that we observe ducks, and we take them out of the wild, we put a little tag on them so we can follow them around, see what they do, where they go, what they eat, because we want to understand ducks. I do believe that there are cosmic neighbors studying us in exactly the same kind of way. And I've come to wonder if some of these encounters with shadow people might be an encounter with observers of that kind, because 95% of the accounts of shadow people that I have heard in the counseling room have been that kind of experience. They are there, they're watching me. They never do anything, they make me feel very uncomfortable, I find them super scary, but they've never really interacted, they've just observed. And that seems to be part of a bigger pattern that I am finding in our ancestral story and ancestral experience. If our ancestors experienced it, then why shouldn't we? But how do we interpret it? What are these shadow entities? One theory I'm considering is that what we perceive might not be a physical presence. It might be the projection into our perceptual field of an entity in a parallel dimension or who operates on a frequency that is visible to the eye of a dog or the eye of a cat, but not visible to our eye. I mean, we only see this portion of the spectrum of radio waves. A cat sees another spectrum, a dog sees another spectrum. Could it be something like that? And one of the reasons I think it might be a shadow or a projection of a being in another dimension is because of something very surprising that I've heard in the coaching space. Now, I've coached many people who've had shadow people encounters, and by total coincidence, people around the world have told me the same hack that they have discovered for disrupting these appearances. And it is the playing of a shortwave radio in their room. Now, my dad used to listen to shortwave radio all the time because that was the only way he could listen to the BBC World Service. And I've heard of people who will have the radio on shortwave, and turn the volume right down so they can't hear anything. But as long as they're doing that, these apparitions are discontinued. I find that fascinating, and it just makes me wonder if there's something to this idea of shadow people being.
I've never actually heard of that before.
That can be disrupted.
Yeah, I have.
Disrupting
Go ahead and
the
pause
sound, radio, or energetic environment.
I've heard of this concept before because it's disrupting the frequency by which that particular being is actually bleeding through from another dimension. The shortwave is actually starting to cancel it out. Therefore, it acts as a repellent. Now, it can do the other thing like a ghost box and attract too if you had it the other way. But I've heard of that where white noise and a shortwave will repel it. I haven't done it myself. I just spoken to people who have actually tried that and have had shadow people occurrences to where they've stopped after they've done that.
I know I listen at nighttime. I listen to many different frequencies as I sleep. So I wonder if that also, keeps them away, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it's coming through on a V2K frequency, like if it's a voice to skull type of incident too, where you would play a shortwave radio, you're canceling out those frequencies too. Some of the people in the disclosure circuit have noticed that same thing with voice to skull, the combating voice to skull. So it's a very similar thing that's going on, dimensional bleed through, things of that nature. You're hitting a certain frequency that either the being doesn't like or it just cancels out either your perception that they're there or it's canceling out their frequency in some way and repelling them. So you playing that, I believe, is actually helping you out on some level.
That's interesting. I'm gonna look more into that because I wonder if something like that could help me too. Because this is really the first I'm kind of realizing this, so I'm definitely gonna look more into that.
Environment of the room. Yet there are aspects to this experience that suggest it is something other than an energetic phenomenon or a projection phenomenon, that these beings might be something other than mere shadows. One of my clients experienced visitations from shadow people for 10 years while he was living in the UK. He then emigrated to another country, and for the whole decade he was living overseas. No more visits from these disturbing shadow people in his home. When he returned to the UK, he moved to a completely different part of the country to where he lived before. But as soon as he was back in the UK, the visitations of the shadow people started up again. And it was only by using that shortwave radio hack he was able to put a stop to it. Now, I find that fascinating. Again, it suggests observation, and it may be observation of a location rather than a tagging of particular individuals. Now, I said just now, it might not be a pure projection or energetic phenomenon. These could be physical entities that are appearing to people in a cloaked form. Now, again, just to clarify, we're talking about a person-sized person, but they are cloaked and they often look like they're wearing a black cloak and a hood but you cannot see their face. There's no visible features. It's just solid black. But I know two people who have had physical interactions with these entities. Mike Ricksecker is the author of A Walk in the Shadows, a complete guide to shadow people. And he tells the experience of being at home as a child and being visited by one of these shadow people. He perceived it in his room, and then the shadow person was shocked that he had been noticed, and then came closer to Mike, took a hold of his arms and crossed them over his chest, and then ran out the room and hid in a cupboard because he didn't want to be perceived by the other people in the house. Now, that's an extraordinary experience for a number of reasons. Firstly, there was a physical interaction, and it was only later in a regression experience that Mike came to believe that the being had done that to try and comfort Mike because he could see Mike was scared. He could see the shadow person was agitated because he didn't want to be seen. And then he was so worried about being seen by the adults in the house that he hid in a cupboard, which again suggests a physical presence. Now, that might sound ridiculous, and as a one-off, you might say there's an imaginative child or there's a child having a dream. But when you hear more and more of these experiences by children and adults, and you notice the patterns, you begin listening a little differently. I have a friend whose name, we'll call him Jim. When he was a young boy, he was very ill. His body was unable to absorb nutrients from his food and came to the point where his health was really failing. He was placed in hospital in a special care unit. His health was so fragile that his mother was allowed to sleep in the adjacent room in the hospital. And then one night, his mother saw a black cloaked figure walk into the room with the babies and toddlers in it. She thought she was seeing a nun in a black habit. And the figure walked up to Jim's crib, bent down and lifted him up and just held him for a few moments and lowered him back down. When Jim's mum asked the staff, they made very clear there are no nuns in black habits who work in this hospital. What was it she saw, and why was she not more disturbed by what had happened? The main reason she wasn't terrified is because of what happened next. Because from the very next day, Jim's health began to lift. His body started absorbing nutrients, and by the time I knew him, he was a very fit and healthy 25-year-old young man, completely healed from what had happened to him. So there is an interaction with a before and an after, a physical interaction where the child was lifted up and lowered back down. It's possible that the shadow people phenomenon straddles more than one phenomenon. It could be a projection. It could be an energy-based being. It could be a being in a dimension out of phase with our own, but occasionally it's in phase sufficiently that we become aware of each other. Could be a physical entity cloaked. But at this point, no one who has wanted to talk to me in coaching about shadow people has reported anything scarier than having one of these beings in front of them, looking at them or observing them. I haven't had any disturbing stories or stories of harm committed by shadow people. Now, your experience might be different, and I'd be very interested to get into conversation with you in the comments as to what you've experienced of these things. Did you experience them as a child? Have you experienced them as an adult? At night? In daytime? In broad daylight? What has your experience been, and how do you interpret it? Mike Ricksecker has reflected on his own experiences and suggests that it's possible that what we perceive is not the prime reality. That if a person were to project their consciousness to another place, to imaginatively be with someone that they love, or to try and remote view someone that they love, how would that be perceived by the other person? Would it be like a little orb in their room? Would it be a shadow person observing them that they would see? And I think that's a very interesting question, suggesting that what we experience is simply our end of an equation. And what that experience is from the other end of the equation could be something quite different. It could be an astral projection. It could be remote viewing. Or it could be a visitation from a person very much like us, but who's cloaked because they don't want to frighten us. Unfortunately, they're not always successful on that score. So those are my thoughts on shadow people to this point. I wonder if some recent sightings in public places might be that kind of an experience rather than actual close encounters with physical beings. But tell me what you think. This is really a
I'm gonna stop it there. I like that viewpoint of shadow people because, you know, the few times that I've encountered them, they just have been observing. And yes, you know, that is kind of creepy. However, if they're just standing there watching you, like, why do we care?
Yeah,
Right.
if they're kind, they're kind, yeah, exactly.
I thought he brought up some interesting theories about like what they could possibly be. I really thought it was interesting. He brought up the astral projection aspect. I didn't even really think about that until he mentioned it. And it's like, what if that is an all-out possibility that maybe sometimes when you see one, whoever it is still technically alive, just somewhere else.
They're projecting into space by locating, yeah. I've heard that quite a bit. That Mike Ricksecker, we actually met him at the conference this last time.
That's
He's
cool.
he's a nice guy. He was selling his books there at the conference this last time. So he was talking about his shadow people experiences and ET experiences, things of that nature. So at the conference. So yeah, him and his wife were there. Nice people.
The other interesting thing that I found was he mentioned that the one with the cloak, this one that I was talking about that I experienced as a kid, I do distinctly remember a hood or like a cloak of some kind. And then he also talked about the physical interaction that not very many people seem to have, but they do. So that was kind of another interesting thing. So it makes me wonder, what was this that visited me back when I was 5 years old? Like maybe it did something for me. I don't, and I'll never know to this day if it actually did something or what.
It could have been a bleed through from another dimension, or a astral projecting person, or even an ET experience. It's the Shadow Man phenomenon falls under those categories, like what he was talking about too. I completely agree with his viewpoint on that, as I've encountered so many variations of that. But yeah, the green-eyed thing, that to me that sounded more ET, but that also sounds dimensional as well.
All right, well, we are going to shift gears just a little bit, and we will go ahead and watch a video where it's scary encounters.
Looking forward to that.
Maybe.
Good old nukes.
Scary things caught on camera. Shadow people. Ghosts of Carmel. A man named Kent says that he began to experience strange occurrences after moving into his house in Carmel, Maine. He says that he began to hear odd noises in the middle of the night and see strange apparitions all around his home.
Another thing that's going on non-stop is they say my name. I mean, constantly they're saying my name. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if they don't say my name right now.
After doing some investigation, he found that his house had once been owned by an undertaker, and that the residence served as a funeral home from the years 1906 to 1919. Kent began to post videos of his strange encounters to his YouTube channel, Ghosts of Carmel, Maine.
I'm uploading a YouTube video now.
In this investigation of his house, an odd voice seems to repeat what Ken is saying.
I think I heard a knock on that door.
The tone of the voice almost sounds like the spirit is mocking Kent. but you be the judge.
I think I heard a knock on that door.
The shadow
The
people.
story gets even
Yeah,
creepier.
that seems more like a
In
mimic.
this clip, Kent begins to hear strange noises and experiences an odd smell coming from his upstairs bedroom. So he grabs his camera and starts recording.
We're going to do a complete walkthrough.
Black screen.
Hope you guys say something or do something.
Oh shit!
God! No! Oh.
So did Kent catch a shadow being on
I would
tape?
nope right out.
Or is it all just a hoax? You decide.
Hope you guys say something or do something. Oh my God!
Okay, that is a little creepy.
By the way, Ken has posted many videos of his ghost encounters over on his YouTube
So
channel.
be careful what you wish
Paranormal
for.
Maine. So be sure to check it out for
Right.
his full ghost investigations. Something on the stairs. This next video was sent in to me by Ryan Hulse. Ryan claims that when he was younger, he would randomly see a large black mass, around 7 feet tall, at odd locations both inside and outside of his house. Of course, no one ever believed him. So one night he decided to try to catch the strange shadow person on tape. Almost 7 years later, and Ryan still has the video.
Right. Second date. It's been okay so far, but what the f? This is what I mean. Crazy. Is it like heaven? Hello. Oh my God. Need a light on. Oh my. Oh. Oh my. Oh. Phone's upstairs. Oh my. I couldn't. I'm leaving the fuck. I'm leaving lights on. This. I swear to I seen something. Right, okay. Right. I need to go. There's my phone.
As Ryan ascends the stairs, you can hear a strange hiss. Ryan says that after this incident, he never saw the bizarre black mass again, almost as if this strange confrontation had somehow driven it away. Now, I know everyone is gonna ask, why did he turn the lights off? And I actually asked Ryan that exact question myself, and he said that the only time he ever saw the shadow was when the lights were dim or off. So that's why he had the lights turned off to try to record the phenomenon. So, did Ryan Hulse capture a real ghost on camera? Or is it all a hoax? A 7-year-long hoax? Let me know what you think. Walker in the Woods. The Czech YouTube channel TV Twix decided to explore a haunted forest in the Czech Republic. They do the typical spirit box session.
Tak začneme. Haló, je tu někdo? Kdo je tady s náma? Co říkala?
But strangely, shortly into the session, the batteries on their camera and the spirit box both begin to die. So, they call it quits. But by far, the strangest thing in the video occurs near the end. As they are wrapping up, they begin to hear strange noises behind them.
I was gonna say something's walking there. Ooh.
Oh yeah, almost camouflage.
Some dark figure seems to float across the path behind them and into the woods. They run to investigate, but find nothing there.
Look what I could do.
So did they catch a shadow being on camera? Or is it all just a hoax? You decide. Shadow Runner. Wesley Wolf had been out drinking all night with his friends on his birthday. When he arrived home early Friday morning, he found that he was locked out of his family home. Since he didn't want to wake his parents, he simply decided to hang out outside and play games on his PlayStation Vita until someone woke up. Then, he started hearing the neighborhood dogs going crazy over something. He decided to record a little video of the field around his house to see if he could catch whatever they might be barking at. He did capture it, but it was something much stranger than he expected.
What was that running?
Honestly, that could probably be an actual person too, because it's night out.
Wesley says that even though he didn't even notice the strange shadow, that soon after recording the video, a sudden wave of fear came over him. He went and pounded on the door of the house until one of his parents woke up and let him in. So is this an odd trick of the light? Did Wesley just have a bit too much to drink that night? Or is this a real shadow being caught on camera? You decide. Just around the corner. On the YouTube channel HRJ Paranormal Adventures, a guy called Hillbilly Rob explores some creepy, allegedly haunted, abandoned places. In this video, he's exploring an abandoned nursing home. When he enters one particular room, his EVP meter goes nuts.
Okay. Dude, it is going off. Who's in here with us? No, that thing is going nuts.
He also receives a bizarre, unexplained scratch on his shoulder. But Hillbilly Rob didn't even notice the most bizarre thing that he captured that night until he reviewed his video later.
I mean, that could
Around
have
the
just...
corner, he captures what almost looks like the shape of a head peering around the doorway. It's so quick, it's hard to even...
I mean, it could have been something there, but they're also moving, so I feel like it could just be the camera, and it looks like there's a lot of holes in the wall. I don't know.
notice, but it actually seems to move back out of sight as he enters. But what do you think? Is this a shadow person or ghost peering around the corner? Or is it just a weird reflection or a camera glitch?
I've seen those
By the way,
reflections
you can check out
before.
Hillbilly Rob's Supernatural Investigations over on his channel.
What's that?
No, I've seen those reflections before, like where like you'll think you're seeing something like move like that. Now I have seen heads peer around corners too, a lot. But I have also seen that phenomenon where a weird shadow will make it look like it's happening too.
Yeah, it could be just a trick of perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. One fun thing was that there was a video that Chris, you had shared with us. I didn't share it on here. And they had mentioned that Friday the 13th was actually based off of a Hat Man or shadow person. And so I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, I found that actually pretty cool. It's like, yeah, the shadow man phenomena. Yeah, you have Freddy Krueger, and you also have Dream Demon as well. Where nowadays, and especially in the profession that I'm in, one of the things that's on the rise are dreamtime invasions by different entities where they'll walk into your dreamscape, and that's where some of the idea for Freddy came from, along with shadow people, and also the fusion of a human with a demon type form. That's kind of a Gnostic idea of a demon taking over a human or fusing with a demon. So yeah, so they integrated that into Freddy Krueger. And I found that actually quite fascinating that the horror industry has actually ran with real concepts, like Wes Craven, especially when he was alive, he did a lot of this. So like Lord of Illusions with that whole thing. Yeah, that I've noticed a lot of phenomena. That's probably a future show we could do at some point on different aspects of the horror film industry and everything, and how what they've integrated. But Freddy Krueger especially, I've noticed, fits the mark pretty closely on some entities that I personally have encountered and other clients and other friends have encountered too. So yeah, I wanted to share that, and that also within that same video. There was also the concept of pressure demons too, where they would feel like pressure on your chest. And I noticed in instances of shadow people and also negative entities, people will feel like their chest is caving in while they're just sitting there, laying down or sitting up or doing whatever. They'll feel this on their chest, and it's the blood vessels in the chest that are reacting to the frequency that's bombarding it, and it's constricting the blood vessels, similarly if somebody was having a heart attack. So some people have mistaken it for that too, because people that have had heart attacks will say just before it feels like somebody's sitting on their chest, and it's the energy interaction. And shadow people have seen shadow people have also noticed that same phenomenon, the pressure demon phenomenon. Are there any more videos?
We do have one more, but we could also, I feel like, I mean, it's, mm, I feel like, there's not as many shadow people footage, I guess, wise on YouTube. So, maybe we could have our listeners just go and check that out to see
Mhm.
what they can find. So,
hmm Yeah, I've noticed the channel called the Y-File seems to have a lot of fascinating stuff on stuff
mhm.
like that. He takes the more skeptical approach, which
Yeah, I
I,
like
you
him.
know, yeah, I like him a lot. AJ does a good job with that. We met his brother at another conference too. They're actually good people. Their producers are good people. They put on a good show. So yeah, we've noticed a lot of things we talk about in there. Now, I don't always like the extreme skeptical approach because I come at it from a different angle, but I understand why. I completely get it and actually agree with a lot of the concepts. So yeah, good channel to go with.
Yeah, I always try to like approach everything at the middle ground too, be a little skeptical because, especially when it comes to all this stuff, you have to. You can't necessarily believe every single thing you hear or see.
Yeah, exactly. You're just asking for it if you do that. I've noticed people that go too far in the other even people in my profession, they go too far into the other area where they're not grounded. And then you have people in the skeptical side, they go too far into the non-believing and they're too hardcore. They don't actually see the forest for the trees. So a middle ground perspective is the way to go.
Yeah. Like in the instance of shadow people, there's probably some even legit, instances where maybe you think you might have saw something paranormal and it might not, it might have just been legit your own shadow.
hmm Yeah, and you're just spooked, or something's making you see things that aren't there, or your adrenaline's up, or something. I've seen all the above, myself included. As much as I see, I've actually tricked myself into seeing things too. So I got to be real careful with that.
You got anything there to add, Laura?
Mhm.
I don't know. I am curious if any of our watchers, though, if they've had any encounters with shadow people. I want to hear about them because it's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, and if you want us to talk about a particular subject, or you have some questions involved in it, you have just shoot a comment below in the comment section.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it tonight. And so we'll thank you everyone for coming into the stream, and we'll see you again next Friday. Same bat channel, same bat time.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.